but he didn't ever let his eyes focus. So he always looked like he was blind, and like he was always, that's why he would kind of be able to stumble a little bit. And like when he was in the street walking, and he tripped over the trash can and shit. That was an accident. He didn't mean to actually fall over the trash can. That just happened because he was doing his thing and he fucked up. He tripped over the trash can.
That would
Jolly.
I would imagine doing that for multiple takes would mess up your eyes. You
Well,
pimply little preppy.
well I'm
You're
gonna
gonna
do
miss.
it, Jolly. And if I was half the man, no, I used to do that speech too. Uh,
Yeah.
he goes, shit, what does he say? He goes, that whole speech at the end, he's like, well, Charlie, it turns out you're not quite a bard man or baird man or whatever, the name of the school. And he goes, Al Pacino goes, but he's not a snitch. And he, oh, bad man, what the hell is that? If I was half the man I was 30 years ago, I'd burn this place to the ground. So, yeah, I
Yeah,
used
I
to do
nailed
that
it.
speech too. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I've been actually working on my Al Pacino. The thing about doing Al Pacino impressions is it hurts so quick. Like you real quick get tired of doing it because your throat starts to hurt. Um, and I was trying to do an impression of like I was trying to think of just random impressions of like funny situations that Al Pacino would get into, and so that I could practice it. And so I was practicing like at a laundromat, like he was picking up his clothes from the laundromat, and he goes, "I'm here to pick up the furry dog suit that I dropped off last week." Charlie, get in the back and get my
Yeah,
furry suit.
because
Uh,
everybody that he talks to is Charlie. Charlie, pimply little preppy.
and then he starts talking
I'm gonna
about
kill myself.
the last time I saw you, Charlie, was in a rice paddy in Da Nang. He does like Vietnam jokes.
Yeah.
That's the beautiful thing about doing a laundromat impression is you can do that because they're all Vietnamese.
Right.
Every last one of them. Good luck finding.
There's got to be some Koreans out there, I'm
Yeah, I
sure.
know they're Koreans. I was just being racist. Let me be racist for a minute.
Fair enough.
Speaking of racism, no, let's talk about. You had some stuff that you wanted to talk about today, V, for the duologue. Can everybody hear V? By the way, let me
I go
know.
silent. I go silent so they don't hear me. No, if you've been in the Discord with me like this week, then you know that I've been binging House. I've been watching the shit out of House MD, and this show, man, like it's so like it's like what it took. I analyze film, so I go through all of the little details of why the character is this way and why the writers wrote it this way or whatever. And like one of the well, after and I'll admit this, after about a season, it like I finally realized, oh, House is like a play on words of Holmes, like a home, right, or Sherlock Holmes, and then his buddy's name is Wilson, which is like two letters from being Watson, right? And then he has the same personality as Sherlock Holmes. He's essentially the Sherlock Holmes of like the medical world, which already like that's enough to sell me on watching this show. But he's also this total misanthrope. Like he hates everybody. He thinks everybody's is a liar, and he like lives to humiliate and like get people to admit that they've lied. And it's such a funny show to me because I love that. Like I relate to that, as a misanthrope myself. I go, yeah, dude, I'm just like this guy. But as the show has progressed, like obviously characters change and evolve, but he's still kind of like a jerk. But there's like these little like semblance of him being a good guy, and you go, well, you got to give him that. Like he's not totally inhumane, right? So it's one of those things. I watch it and I go, I guess maybe there is hope for me. I'm not like without humanity, because sometimes I get, and this is me like bearing my soul to you, like let me get real, dog. Let me get real.
Do
At
it.
the beginning of
Preach,
the
V.
show, I'm already jumping into emotional shit. Like for me, it's like I'm this like lonely misanthrope that lives alone, right? Like self-inflicted exile. And then I go, oh, maybe it's just because of me. Maybe I like repel people. I'm this outcast and like I'm just not good with people. And so they don't know how to deal with me, or maybe they go, oh, he's a jerk. That's just what they say. Which like with this house character, that whole show you're either saying, man, he's such a jerk, or you kind of justify why he has to be an asshole. But then you go through the show and you go, well, everybody calls him a jerk, and so maybe he's just like fitting that mold for them. Like this is what you think I am, and I don't have the energy to prove you wrong. And it makes me better at my job too. So he can take out all that like humanity for the situation to be as purely logical as possible, which makes it so entertaining because the other characters on the show, his crew, are not at all like that, right? So I guess it's a social experiment that, again, this is a TV show we're talking about with people with written lines, right? Somebody wrote these lines for them. That's not actually House. In case you didn't know, television is not real. In case you didn't know, so it's not an
What?
accurate. It's not like an accurate psychosis of me comparing myself to House, but I do relate to that because he has a lot of the same like personality quirks, right? And so I sit here alone in my house and I go, I guess maybe I'm okay to be around some people, you know? Like
Yeah.
maybe it's okay, or maybe I can be a good to society, even though I'm like this just horrible degenerate. Like I have such a skewed view on the world and on society that like um it kind of alienates me, or I what is I alienate myself on purpose, right? Do you get where I'm coming from with
Yeah, no, I
this?
totally get it.
Or are you
I
I
think
know
you're
what you're
right. I think you're right.
am
I've
I?
always been your like you're hopeful, right? Like I'm the hopeful guy for V. You always talk about, oh no, this is it for me. This is I'm just gonna be on my own for the rest of my life, and I'm never gonna find the right woman, and I'm never gonna blah blah blah. And you've always been that guy, and I've always been. Well, God forbid I ever procreate, right?
Yeah.
Um, and you do that stuff, and I'm always like, no, one day I know that you're gonna find the right woman. And see, look at me now, I get to rub it in your face. I'm the mayor of I Told You Town, because
Fair enough.
you're there now. So yeah, I've always been hopeful for you, and I think House is a good comparison for you because House, as much as you want to hate him, he's just really good at what he does, right? So he's like an expert, and that's the kind of person. I have a few things that I want to note about House. First and foremost, my dad used to watch House a lot, and he'd always talk about it. He would watch. There was the way it was lined up on, was it TBS or whatever channel it was, or maybe it was several channels, but it was like a series of shows that he would watch every night or every week, and he called
Hmm.
it the slap hour or the slap lineup or something, because it was all the characters that he wanted to slap for one reason or another. And it was House and Psych and Monk. And he said House because he's such a jerk, Psych because he's such an idiot, and Monk because he's so neurotic, right? And he's just so like
Yeah.
OCD and all that.
Yeah.
He's like, but they're all really good at what they do. So he's like, there's no
Yeah.
denying that, and they're very entertaining. But boy, do they have something about them that you just want to hit them for. Um, and House really reminds me of when I was a kid. I was 12, maybe 10 or 12. I fell out of a tree and broke my arm, and I think I talked about this at one point. I broke my arm in 5 places, and it came out of the skin in 3 places. And I lived in a little like a town of 10,000 people, and it had a clinic there where they did like minor surgeries usually, but they never did anything big. And anything big, they would send you to Madison or one of the bigger hospitals nearby. And for my situation, like my arm was just, it was dangling or whatever, and it was completely broken in half, and there's shooting blood everywhere, and it was just a real nasty situation. And there was one doctor, Dr. Baumunk is his name. He said, I'll take a crack at it. And he was just right there at that clinic. He said, I think I can fix it. And they were like, okay, because we got the helicopter on standby. We can get him to Madison. He might lose his arm, and that was the problem. Was like, if I would have flown to Madison, they could have fixed it to some degree. Like they could have stopped the bleeding. They could have saved my life, but they really couldn't save the arm by the time I would have gotten to Madison. And he said, no, I'll take a crack at it. And he did, and he fixed my arm completely. I mean, it was completely healed. I got full. They told me that I would not get full use out of my arm ever again. I did. But this dude, Dr. Baumunk, total dick. And he's an Asian guy too, but very old, and smoked cigarettes, like chain smoked cigarettes. So he had that real droopy face. He's just very old. And but he had no bedside manner whatsoever. Very effective surgeon though. And that's what House reminds me of. He's just total dick, no bedside manner, but extremely effective at what he does. And likewise, I think that applies to you. And all the things that you excel at, you're very good at them, but you have no bedside manner when it comes to like dealing
Yeah.
with people. So that's my
Yeah.
opinion on that.
Yeah, that's a fair argument. I agree. I agree. It doesn't make me feel any better about it. You know what I mean? Hey, can I address something in the chat?
Please, please do. I see it. I see it.
Why is it that like once I have a girlfriend, all these weirdos come out of nowhere to harass her?
You know, it's
It's
because
like
they're
the weirdest,
jealous.
it's like the weirdest thing to me. Like this guy is targeting my girlfriend already, or whoever Youper gamer is. It's just I find it odd.
Can
Please don't
we
insult or attack my girlfriend Sharon. It's not appreciated by me.
attack us by all means?
Yeah,
But
attack us by all means, but leave
but
her
for
out of
God's
this.
sakes, let's leave
Yeah,
the friends of the show alone. Like
yeah, Youper
kind of like
gamer, you
you know,
are.
it's like when people attack you. It's like whatever, who cares? But
Yeah,
God help you if you attack one of my friends, because then I'll get involved. Because
yeah,
my personality, who I am, you could talk bad about that all day. But come on, let's leave the ladies out of this. Let's leave the the bystanders alone. Can we talk? Can somebody explain to me this? Because I think I have something of a grasp on the Taiwan China situation. Do you want to address that, V? Because I think it's similar to Hong Kong, right? Where it's vying for independence, or am I
yeah.
thinking of Thailand?
No, you're kind of on track there. From what I gather, and my information isn't fully correct, you'd have to ask Sharon to be accurate, to be honest. But from what I understand, China treats Taiwan like they belong to them, but Taiwan doesn't feel that way, and so they feel like they're independent. So a lot of Taiwanese don't care for the Chinese because they all think that. So I think there's like a bit of oppression going on. There's probably some war too, I'm imagining, but I don't know for sure. That's my understanding of what it is. I do know for sure that Taiwanese do not like to be called Chinese, and other people know that too, especially people who have heard it from me say that before on this show. So I'm imagining that whoever this Youper gamer guy is heard me say that before and directly decided to like make a joke about my girlfriend again, knowing that that was something that would antagonize myself or my girlfriend. That's just a theory, but Occam's razor, the simplest explanation is usually what it is. What do you think?
I think that's probably accurate. It might this super gamer might actually be I Love God again under a different pseudonym,
Yeah,
but
that's a good
um,
assumption too. That's a
I
good
think so.
assumption.
Here's
Since
my
I love
argument.
God isn't in the chat.
Yeah, yeah. It's you would think he would have logged on from a different device, just so he could be like, no, that's not me, and accidentally be
Troll's gonna
wearing the
troll.
he's going to
Isn't
be
that
wearing the fake mustache on the wrong
yeah,
account.
yeah,
Um, this
yeah.
would be the argument we see it a lot, and I mean this is a current event thing that we've been dealing with for some time. Is the Hong Kong protests, right? And we were all
Mhm.
very supportive of the folks in Hong Kong. Because they were standing up to China, and I mean they were really like Hong Kong. Let's be honest, is kind of like the Spartan 300 versus the Persian Empire in
Right.
trying to declare their independence from China. It just wasn't going to happen. But they stood up and they fought for independence, and now they're reaping they're sowing what they reaped, right? Where they are reaping what they sowed. They're reaping what they sowed, I think, because now China is really bearing down kind of hard on them. And to refer to somebody who is trying to declare independence or who has declared independence from a bigger entity, like the Hong Kong did with China, or Taiwan does with China, or and can we just address the elephant in the room that China is an oppressive empire that like
Yeah,
does
that's right.
this sort of thing all the
Yeah.
time?
Fuck
Uh,
China, dude. Fuck
and
China. That's what I say about China.
I
Fuck
totally
China.
agree.
Should I say it
And
again one more time?
if you'd like,
Fuck China.
okay. Now that we get torn down, we get
Yeah,
taken down
just
because
so we're
YouTube
clear,
is
that's my stance on China.
uh, they they also, I mean, this would be comparable to, now I don't know where Uper Gamer is from. I would assume from either the UP, so the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, which is still technically the United States. That would be like calling somebody from the United States British, or calling, or saying something akin to saying that we are still a British empire, we're still a British settlement. When no, we in fact declared our independence from Great Britain hundreds of years ago, And to call us British would be an insult, or like a great insult to an American. So that would.
I love how you're trying to reason with a troll. You're like, here's the reason why it's insulting to people. Like this troll cares. Like he cares at all why it's insulting to people. The point is that it's insulting. That's why he's doing it.
Well, what I'm trying to do here is I'm trying to separate us from that person. Plus, there might be some people in the chat who perhaps don't understand what's going on over in China.
Oh yeah, okay, fair enough. I forgot we have other listeners.
Yeah, other than the troll.
You make a valid point. Okay,
we try to occasionally educate our listeners. So, but yeah,
go ahead and address them before our duologue gets out of hand, as it usually does. Address them in shot. Do that.
All right. Well, we've got, of course. Let's
try to stay on schedule for one.
Yeah, at 9:30, no shit, we are cutting to the content. So, of course, welcome to the chat, Steren, who beat Mike today. So kudos to Steren. She just got an extra point in the first in column. Mike in Manitoba, close second. Jay Coop came in. And, of course, welcome Jay Coop. And Bodacious. And Uper Gamer. I'm going to welcome you.
I get it. Well, I was reading it like, whoa. I didn't even say it out loud. That's why I didn't say it out loud. But.
All right, leave me alone. Let me live. Let me move past that embarrassing situation from last week. All right. And to answer your question, Bodacious, the music at the beginning of the episode is what's the word I'm looking for? When what the hell is that called? Where you're like free to use. That's not the word I was trying to use. Yeah, they no, it's the free to use, license free or royalty free. It's that type of music. So
yeah, royalty free.
I had to hunt for something that we could use and not get in trouble for, and not get a copyright strike every doggone time we logged on to this friggin' thing. But yeah, it's actually, I don't even remember what it's called. Somebody had made it, and I didn't find it anywhere else on the internet. So I'm really hoping that we're the only show that uses it. As far as I know, we are. So one day I'll have to write a nice letter to the person who made that. But he has like tons of fucking music that I'm sure he's since forgotten about. He's one of them beat maker folks. Yeah.
So a poser, you mean? Remember posers?
Yeah.
They wore skate shirts and they like didn't skateboard.
But they did it for fashion.
Yeah, they did it for fashion. To me, that's what hipster is now. Like hipster is just another word for poser to me. Like, would you agree with that? Like it's kind of like the evolved term of poser.
If you recall the movie SLC Punk,
with Matt Lillard, right?
Yeah.
Matt Lillard.
It was Matt Lillard.
I should have said a wrong actor like I usually do.
Yeah, no, who you're thinking of is.
But that was an obscure movie, so I had to prove that I knew it. I had to prove that I knew the obscure movie. I've never. I'll be honest there. I've never watched it.
It's I enjoy it. I enjoy that movie. I bought it years and years ago, back when it was one of the first DVDs I ever bought. But they there's a part in there where, and that's where that quote came from that I said. He goes, "Posers are people who dress punk, but they do it for fashion." Is how that's Matthew Lillard who says that.
Yeah.
And
Shaggy.
He talks about Shaggy. Remind me to talk about that in a minute, because that was a really funny joke that I did on Twitter that nobody liked, and I want to talk about it. But there's a group of people called the Mods. I think they're called the Mods, and they dress like hipsters, right? They wear like the derby and the stupid trench coat, and they dress like they're detectives back in Scotland Yard, or constables and all that. Yeah, they dress like that, and again, they're doing it for fashion. There's no other reason to dress like that, and they don't utilize any kind of they don't utilize it for any actual useful purpose. They just do it because they think it looks cool.
Yeah, it's not practical at all.
No,
it's just simple.
So that's what I think hipsters. It's just another version of that. You've got all these people who have specific lifestyles that they live, like the punks and the skaters and the what's another one? You got the hipsters. You've got hipsters stereotypically.
What about goths? Goth
Yeah,
is a
those
good.
two. Yeah, that's another good reason. When's the last time you ever talked to a goth who actually like sacrificed a goat to the Dark Lord? You know,
Yeah,
like it doesn't happen. They
yeah,
do it for fashion.
yeah, that's right.
And so skaters, they dress like skaters, but they don't know how to skateboard. The hipsters, they dress like lumberjacks, but they can't cut wood. Um, and
Yeah, that
that's
makes sense.
that's just the type of people. So just dude, just dress, wear jeans and a hoodie or a t-shirt, and call it a day, and do whatever you want. If you have to, if you so choose to go skate, throw on some fucking long shorts and or some board shorts and
But you gotta have skate
some
shoes to
Vans.
skate.
Yeah, you
You gotta
gotta
have.
have Vans or
Yeah.
Chucks or Osiris. You gotta wear those types of shoes if you're gonna skate, and then and then cut your hair in a mohawk if you so choose. But I would
Yeah.
recommend wearing a helmet. Right, I'm the guy who watches all these videos of people getting hurt like really bad, and many of them dying, and a lot of them are people who are skating or who are doing some kind of extreme sport, and they crack their heads clean open. And all I can think is, and I tell my kids all the time, I'm like, where's your helmet? Because, if you guys are going to do anything more than just kind of riding up and down the sidewalk here, you better be wearing a helmet. If you're trying to ride on the road, if you're trying to do tricks and shit, you better be wearing a helmet, because there's no way I'm going to let you fucking traverse the asphalt without a helmet on. Yeah, I recommend wearing a helmet no
That's
matter how fucking punk you are. Say again?
I say I said the fashions change though. Like when I was like, let me do the old man for you. When I was your age, when I was a younger, skateboard clothes consisted of like baggy jeans, like boot cut, but like baggy, and like
Yeah, like the Jinkos.
yeah, some styles I never cared for. Some people they wore them over their shoes, but I liked my shoes to show. Like that was to me being a skater. Like part of the fashion was if you could also skate and be fashionable, that made you 10 times cooler, right?
Oh,
So
no
the
doubt.
shoes were important. You get like a pair of etnies, and then you puff the tongues with some socks, like some extra socks to puff the tongues, and then it actually made your skate a little bit better because of the traction. And so then you add the baggy pants, you've got like loose mobility, right, for tricks. It made sense back then. To me, it did. But now I see skaters and they're wearing like tight hipster, like skinny
Oh,
jeans,
yeah.
and it doesn't make sense to me. I'm like, how are you able to get any pop when you can barely move your legs? But then they do. Like I saw a video the other day of this dude do a 360 flip down some stairs, and I was like, holy shit, that was fucking perfect. Landed on the bolts, perfect everything. And then I go, but how did he do that with those pants on? They're dick tight, dick tight,
Yeah, yeah,
like
yeah.
that tight. So
Maybe
I don't.
they.
It defies the laws of physics. I don't get it. Maybe it's the aerodynamic of. I don't know.
You know what I think it is? I think he's probably wearing. Have you ever seen those stretchy kind of jeans? They're not like tights, but they're stretchy, but
Yeah,
they
yeah,
wear them tight, so you still
yeah.
have full mobility in them,
It's
but
like
they're not
30%
huggers.
polyester.
Yeah,
They're
yeah,
almost tight, but they're not.
yeah. They're
You
right on the
would-
line.
Yeah.
Um, Also, want to welcome to the chat Yakov. It's been a while since I think I've seen him like pop in the middle of the show, but we were too busy ranting about one thing or another that I
Yeah.
didn't get a chance to welcome him. So now that we're kind of in the slow part of the show, I do want to say welcome to the chat Yakov. He's got, if you want to plug your thing in the chat, please do, Yakov. I'll read it off. He's got his own show going on, and he's itching for content. So if you've got content for Yakov that you want Yakov's curious brand of entertainment to address, hit him up, because he's got time now apparently. What I yeah that I don't know what I was gonna say. Did you want me to do that shot, by the way, just so I
Yeah,
didn't
yeah,
forget?
yeah. Do the shot, man. What are you toasting to? The
To
verdict? Are you going to toast to the verdict?
Yeah, should I? I feel like we should address that real quick with the remaining 6 minutes.
All right.
Before we're like, our arm is twisted so hard that we have to talk about the content. The verdict. Here's my opinion on the verdict. So to the verdict. Yuck. I'm doing moonshine now. I've been doing like the last couple episodes. I've been doing moonshine. Last week it was peach. This time it's just straight moonshine.
Did you buy a banjo too, or what?
No, I did not. But I did get raped by a fat man in the woods.
Oh.
Hey,
I was gonna say, did you drive around in the General Lee? I was gonna make a Dukes of Hazzard joke, but you just went off the rails with that one.
I will always take it to the far end of the, to the far end of the
I
spectrum
couldn't
there.
even do the build up like we usually do, where it's like okay, that went too far. You just went right for it,
Well,
which I appreciate.
time is of the
That's
essence.
not the
So
middleman.
time is of the essence. So I'm just
Yeah,
instead of
fair
like
enough.
letting you build it up,
Well,
you say
we're gonna
like,
actually get to our content today because King Cracker isn't in the chat.
oh, that's
He was the
true.
one that was sworn to derail us.
Um, so the verdict, I am totally indifferent to it. I was surprised. I was certainly shocked. I thought it was going to be manslaughter 2 was going to be the no-brainer. And I thought that the murder charges they were going to have a more difficult time dealing with because the murder charges, somebody brought it up in the chat. They said that somehow Derek Chauvin was able to simultaneously, unintentionally, and intentionally kill George Floyd, right? So that was the difference between the two murder charges. And I understand that, and we know this, that prosecution would just throw a shitload of charges, and then it's on the defense to strike a lot of them off and be like, no, that doesn't apply, that doesn't apply, that doesn't apply. But they were able to get those 3 to stick, which they were contradictory, right? Like one murder charge was he did it with malice, with intent, and the other one was it was an oopsie daisy, So how he was able to kill George Floyd both intentionally and unintentionally at the same time will always be a mystery to me. And I'm really hoping that they're able to to deal with it on appeal and get it canceled or get it wiped out or at least declared mistrial because of the whole situation with Maxine Waters, for instance, calling for people to just riot if the things don't go their way. He was found guilty the day Floyd died, unfortunately. So that's also another inconvenient thing. That the judge pointed out specifically that the argument can be made, and realistically, the whole trial could be turned over just because of all these factors that kind of were the perfect storm to make it so that they were able to get the 3 times guilty verdict that they got. And I think it was unfair, right? I'm not one to point out like, oh, well, that's bullshit, that's unfair, because I think a lot of times things are fair, they just don't go our way. But in this situation, I think it was unfair, because why would the jurors vote for a conviction, or why would they vote for a verdict that was going to result in their city burning to the ground? So I would think that in order to have a fair trial, there would have to be some extra steps that they would have to take. The trial would have to be held elsewhere. People would have to be bussed in. Jurors would have to be bussed in from somewhere else. The jury would have to be made up of the population that probably a national population. So for me, it's supposed to be a jury of your peers, right? And they talk about how race doesn't matter, but then the whole argument, every single argument has to do with race mattering. So if that's the case, my argument would be I need for it to be a jury of my peers. And as an American, I expect there to be 6 white people and then 2 black guys, 2 Hispanics, and 2 Asians. That would be my requirement, because that would make up or maybe even 1 Asian and 1 Jew, because that would make up the demographics of the United States, and I would feel that would be a fair thing. In this case, it was 6 black people, which is totally unfair, because then all of a sudden you've got a bunch of sheepish white people having to say, well, I don't think he was guilty. And then all 6 black guys would turn and look at that person and give them this evil eye, like, how dare you? Like,
Yeah,
this was
burned to the ground because of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, dude. Everybody's under duress. You know what this proves to me? It proves that, first of all, everybody is under duress when it comes to the law right now. Like you are bowing to the black mob. That's all there is to it. The sad part about it is, though, like, this is what depresses me, is that our system has failed. big time.
Yep.
Like this dude is like we all know. Like it even came out that he didn't kill him. It came out that he didn't kill him by asphyxiation. So we all know that. But the jury doesn't care about that information apparently. It doesn't matter the guy was on fentanyl. None of that matters. To me, this says the system failed, like
Yep.
big time. Which to question that makes you go, well, does that mean that democracy has failed? Which yes, it has. I hate to break it to you, but look at how it's going right now. Definitely it has. That's my I watched that thing Larry Elder before the trial. He predicted this would happen. He even talked about the OJ trial and like Rodney King and stuff. And he was like, a lot of those black jurors just voted the way that it would benefit the black person because of the Rodney King thing that had just happened. And because of that, they even had an interview with this black ex juror, and she was just like, they were all, did you know that that would end up this way? And she was like, yeah. And they were like, well, don't you care? And she just shrugged her shoulders, like, nope, I did not. I did not care at that time, still didn't. Which it makes you really question community and who to trust in this world, I guess. You certainly don't go to jail for something right now and don't go to jail if you're white, dude. Especially white. You'd
Yeah.
be screwed.
That poor, and frankly, I don't care about Derek Chauvin. I really don't. Was he? If I was a juror, I would have absolutely voted guilty on manslaughter too. There's no denying that his actions um, probably contributed to the death of George Floyd. Do I think that George Floyd would have died without him in the equation? I don't know. Probably not. He probably would have just gone home and slept off the fentanyl or whatever. Uh, he might have. I don't know. But that's something that we'll never know. Do I think that having to deal with all these police officers surrounding him and holding him down, even though he was resisting, and I don't think that they went out of line with the way they handled him, but the fact that he was there was enough to be like, well, the case really was made for manslaughter too. Because, like, okay, if you're drinking and driving, or even, let's go this route, if you're driving and for whatever reason your car doesn't stop and you run somebody over, and it's even if it's the fault of the vehicle manufacturer, perhaps some fluke accident, because you were there and because you were the operator of the vehicle, you can still be charged with manslaughter in a lower degree, kind of like what he was charged with, second or third or whatever. You can still be charged with manslaughter, absolutely. And I think the fact that he was there and that was just enough for them to charge him with manslaughter. So I think based on what we know and based on what was presented and the arguments that were made, I think I probably would have voted guilty on manslaughter too. Murder, though, no. Like I think that's a bridge too far, right? If they would have, they took a gamble and they won, granted, by charging him with all those things, but whatever. I think it pisses me off that the jury would fall for it and that they would be such cowards that they wouldn't be able to kind of like see through all this nonsense or at least stand their ground on it. So I don't know. I think, but again, it doesn't surprise me that they would vote guilty. It did surprise me, mind you. I thought that they would vote guilty for manslaughter too, and that would be that. But it doesn't really surprise me when it came to the fact that they voted guilty for all three, because I've seen what the general population is okay with right now. I've seen the sort of things that they're willing to side with, right? Transgenderism, all this godlessness, all this criminal activity. Oh, well, it's okay to protest because it's okay to riot because this is a legitimate form of expression and all that shit. I think that because of all that, because I know just the zeitgeist, right? It doesn't really surprise me that they would be like, okay, well, yeah, guilty for murder because blah 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 blah. Black Lives Matter. I think a lot of
Yeah, that's it.
balls were
Stop that
dropped.
right there.
So, but again, he's a cop who was a little heavy-handed, mind you. Most cops are, and I think I'm okay with that because I understand that their job sucks and it's very difficult. But yeah, like it's a cop off the streets, And like I said the other day about that chick who thought she was using her taser and shot the black guy, I'm like, I don't really care because this black kid is dead, who has a criminal record, and a woman cop is off the streets. So
Wasn't
it's
his
like,
name like Little Assassin too? His
no,
name
that's a
was Little
different kid.
Assassin.
Lil Homicide. You're
Yeah,
thinking
Little
of.
Homicide. That's
That's a
right.
different guy. That's a different black kid. He's a 13-year-old kid that got smoked by the cops. But he also had a gun. And then there's
Yeah.
this 15-year-old chick or 16-year-old chick who was killed by the cops as the verdict was dropping yesterday. And they were like, "Oh, she was an honor roll student." Turns out the video, the body cam, shows her actively trying to stab another girl after being told to drop the knife and lie down or whatever, and she didn't. She went after the girl and tried to stab her. And now all of a sudden, it's basically dropped out of the news because they realized all of a sudden, oh, well, this was a justified police shooting. But yeah, man, I'm so tired of it. I'm so done with it. But a cop off the street it's not gonna kill me, and a criminal dead or off the streets, that's not gonna hurt my feelings either. So the verdict had no bearing on me whatsoever. Will I continue to support police over criminals? Of course, there's no doubt about that, because I'm for law and order. Will I support every cop and every action that they perform? No. And if they do something that I find to be over the top, of course, I'll throw them under the bus too. Do I think Derek Chauvin necessarily went overboard? No, I don't think so. I think he probably could have handled it differently. But in the moment, if you're trying to stop a situation, sometimes you have to do things that are outside of the, what you're allowed to do as a cop or as a person. And I give people the benefit of the doubt in those situations. I give officers the benefit of the doubt in those situations because their job is fucking difficult. Whereas, and I love the whole thing. Well, I saw the argument the other day. Cops should, they know that they put their lives in danger every single day. So if they know that getting shot is an occupational hazard. And then somebody said, well, isn't that true also of criminals? Like they wake up every morning knowing that getting shot is, occupational hazard, or being arrested or being the victim of supposed police brutality is occupational hazard. Like, why is it true for one but not for the other? And honestly, fuck criminals. I think if somebody does something that is even remotely dangerous, I think cops should be able to shoot them on the scene, on the spot. I just wish George Floyd would have stayed on his feet and tried to fight the cops upright, because then they would have been able to shoot him and been done with it. But that's my opinion on the whole matter. Did you have anything to add to that, V?
Well, it wouldn't have mattered whether it was George Floyd or anybody else. It would have been whoever the next person was that got shot by the cops that brought all this Black Lives Matter stuff, because it's not like he was the one that caused it. It's a movement that was used to put the Democrat Party in power. Like, we all understand that. That's not a conspiracy. That's exactly how it worked, and it happened. And now you've got these people calling to defund the police, and they don't realize that the only thing after the police left would be the military, which means that now your problems are being solved by the military. And I don't think anybody really wants, military martial law, right? Like, you don't want that. I assure you, you don't want that. Then we really do live in a communist dictatorship. But that's what we're etching towards, and that's what people don't realize, or they're marching with their brains, being controlled. However you want to put it, the fact of the matter is that we're slowly getting closer to that, and it's not my fault. I can tell you that much. I can't blame me for it, because
I voted for the Orange Man.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly right. I did. The one time that it didn't even fucking matter. One time that I fucking vote, it didn't even fucking matter because the fucking election was rigged. Yes, that's right. I believe the election was rigged. I think you do you agree with me that the election was rigged?
Yeah, you're not wrong.
Did we agree on that at one time, that the election was totally rigged?
Yeah, I think it was all bullshit. I think a lot of times it is, and I think just this time they just so happened to, they were able to lug their plan over the finish line because we had this. They needed that edge, and they got it in the COVID scheme. Also, welcome to the chat. We had a couple more people show up. Pariable. I Love God is here, V. Good news. Somebody with a dash in their name who doesn't have a name. Megabit, of course, happy to see you. Glad to see you're still here. I Lack Tact is also here. So welcome everybody to the chat. And I think we're getting ready to switch over to talking about the content that we set out to talk about. We were gonna do something else today. We were gonna do we were gonna put it off another week because we got Mike's blessing. He said that we could put it off another week, but so that we could talk about the George Floyd situation in greater depth. But and I really wanted to do commentary over the riots, but I haven't seen any good riots going on. So it was we'll save that for another day. We'll save that for the next Black Lives Matter protest. So without further ado, let's go ahead and go into the you had me at pyramids.
Shit like, oh, I'm gonna go derail their show. I almost take it as an insult that he didn't show up to derail us because he was bragging like he was gonna. And here we are now on track to actually talk about our topic. And this dude doesn't even show. So if you ever are you listening to the what you call it, the replay, King Cracker, I'm a little insulted. You didn't show up for the live show. Just so we're clear. Not that I didn't want to stay on track, because I am actually looking to other content in the future that I'm looking forward to. We have a couple more episodes lined up that I'm excited for, and we haven't gotten to them because the past few weeks we've been getting derailed like a mofo. So just so you know, I'm actually glad we're on track here. So there, how do you feel about that?
Are you talking to him still for?
I'm talking to anybody who's listening. All of y'all mofos.
Oh,
everyone.
All you bastards in the chat.
Everyone.
You rotten bastards.
Time. Yeah.
So I did want to address real quick before we Mike said his kids still think he's in there somewhere. I thought you were the last I thought I pulled that last video from, or that last bit of video from your home movies that you sent me. That one where he's sitting there with the sign or whatever. I did want to talk about that joke that I did on Twitter the other day, that Scooby-Doo thing. It was so funny to me when I wrote it, and it was even still funny after I read it, because, you know, there's that joke where it's like, well, you were out partying and drinking and getting laid. I studied the blade, and it's like the euphoric guy with the fucking sword.
Yeah.
And I did one where I said, well, you were out while you were out partying and getting laid, I studied the Scooby-Doo universe and categorized the canon into canon, non-canonical, and expanded universe and legends or whatever. Which, because I thought about it and I thought, I wonder what. There's so much Scooby-Doo stuff out there, right?
There's a lot now. There's a bunch of different shows.
You've got the movies, right? And you've got the Scoob, the CGI one, and then you've got the original cartoon, and then you've got What's New Scooby-Doo, and then a pup named Scooby-Doo, and you've got so much in the timeline.
There's even a show called Daphne and Velma. There's even a show called that now.
See, I would categorize that as legends. I don't think that falls under the canon.
It's fan fiction, is what it is, really. It's fan fiction.
So I wondered what all in the Scooby-Doo universe was considered canon. And so that was the whole premise behind the joke. And then it said, instead of teleports behind you, nothing personal, kid, it said Jinkies behind you, nothing personal, Scoob. I thought that was so funny. Nobody liked it, though.
Yeah. Nobody got it. Your humor is too highbrow for them.
I wish that was the case, but I don't think that's true. I think it was designed. Sometimes I'll do the tweets that are just nonsense like that, and I go from like I'm going to talk about like making fun of politics and like be really intense about it, and then I'm going to go and I'm going to talk about weird sexual stuff and be offensive and graphic in my sexual content. And then in the middle there's like I'm going to say something silly that has nothing to do with anything, and I'm just going to try to slip it in as if like it belongs here. And that was one of those tweets where I just, I threw it in there hoping somebody would be like, "Oh, haha, very funny, Tom." Nobody found it funny except for me. I still find it funny. And I always will, and that will be forever my thing now is you know talking about the Scooby Doo
Well,
extended universe.
I'm for giving it the old college try at the very least.
Thank you,
Yeah.
thank you. Sometimes you got to take a chance, and uh, yeah, I like Tax said I saw a Daphne and Velma video once. That was something
Yeah,
else, I think.
yeah, I saw
Uh,
that one.
so what are we talking about tonight, V? Did you want to preface this with anything?
Well, we're actually talking about the pyramids today, right? Like what they are, if there's aliens involved, or
Oh, I didn't prepare for that. I thought we were talking about something else
I
today.
just watched Stargate. I've been binging House, so I can't fit it into my schedule.
You didn't bother to watch any of those mysteries or like on History Channel, right? 90% of History Channel's content has nothing to do with history, and if it does, it's like some kind of fake history, like ancient aliens
Yeah.
or aliens building the pyramids or whatever. Um, so what somebody had brought, Mike had actually brought this up, and that's how it ended up being an M Files thing. He wanted to know who built the pyramids, so we are going to address that tonight. We're going to answer that question. um, and welcome to the chat, Chris Rose. But we're going to talk about the pyramids, what they are, who built them, what their purpose is, and let me make sure I got
Was it was it Space Jews? Is Space Jews
it
the
was the
answer?
space Jews with their space lasers, their Jewish space lasers, which is apparently a real theory. It was brought up by a very prominent politician. Um, I don't think it was a prominent politician. I think it was that chick who's always getting in trouble, who's like a brand new congresswoman who's always getting in trouble and shit. So let's pull up here. I've got. I'll talk a little bit about the pyramids. This is one of the where they are. I guess we'll talk about, and then we'll go from there. So you know that we often think of the Egyptian pyramids as being like the pyramids, right? That's
Hmm.
the ones that people often talk about. Turns out there are pyramids like all over the world, even at that time, like the BC era, the before the Common Era, as it's called. There were some in Egypt in 25, and they suspect that they were built somewhere between 2550 and 2490 BC.
Where did you get these pictures from? TikTok? Does that say TikTok?
Does it? No, it
Browse
says
TikTok.
triptych.
Oh,
Triptych.
these Mexico ones, that's the ones that the Mayans were
Aztecs.
rolling heads down they're playing
Yeah.
volleyball with heads.
They actually just found a huge stack of human heads down there, and now they're going through them. I don't know. I saw the picture of it the other day, and it showed. Oh, I don't know. I put it on you while I'm
That's a
talking.
picture of me.
Yeah, that's the head that I was talking about. They found that head down there. No, I saw the picture of all the skulls lined up on the table, and they have like the little evidence marker next to it. And I'm like, are these guys trying to solve like BC cold cases or whatever? Like they have them, like they're actually trying to figure out whose head is this. We need to determine the owner of this head. So that I sincerely doubt some of these individuals. I sincerely doubt all of these individuals have DNA on record. But I wish them all the best of luck in trying to determine whose heads these were. So here's the Egyptian pyramids. These dirty, nasty ruins.
And
Here's
what
something.
about camels here? What's up with those camels there?
They're just there. They just happen to. They photobombed this picture of the pyramids. I was trying to get a picture of the pyramids, and this asshole decided to walk his
Yeah, you just
camels through.
decided to leave the camels in.
Yeah.
It's distracting. I'm just saying. That's all.
Well, I'm going to distract you a little further. Did you know, like, and here's another fun fact: is people think that the pyramids are kind of like out in the middle of nowhere, like surrounded by desert or whatever. That's not at all true. Like you can see here, they're right outside the city. Can you imagine what an eyesore that is? You know, when you wake up and you stretch in the morning in Egypt, and you have to look at these dirty humps of clay.
Do you know why camels have humps?
Why?
Because they swallow their saliva so much
That can't
that
be true.
it accumulates in their back.
That's why you're not supposed to swallow your saliva.
Because it can accumulate.
You'll end up looking like one of those, looking like a human camel. But
I was trying to think of something funnier of why they have humps, like they're really gay or something. But that was all I could come up with on the spot.
Well, I was gonna roll with it, but it was too far out there even for me. But yeah, you can see here. Here are some of the more popular pyramids that people talk about. You can see that you can draw all these comparisons, right? Like, look at these entryways, and as a matter of fact, look at these mummies from the different. Turns out mummies.
That was the first thing that caught my attention were the dead mummies, and they look like mummies too, like mom mummies.
Have you ever seen
Like-
those anti-abortion ads where it's like it shows the fetus? Like, that's kind of what these look like. These are actually prehistoric anti-abortion ads.
That is some creepy ass shit. That first one right there looks like the ring. That's what it looks like to me. The ring.
He looks like one of my cousins asking if I have any games. You got any games on that phone?
It's the last guy that asked you for a cigarette. I don't have asthma.
He's the crackhead outside of 7-Eleven who's like, "Sir, I'm on my way to the airport. My wife and we got a flat tire, and if you could give me like $5, I would be sure to mail it back to you." That's what that guy is.
Yeah.
The
Or it's just
middle.
Michael Jackson. You just threw in a picture of Michael Jackson post-op.
Yeah, that's the one. Then that chick in the middle, she looks like, those scary stories to tell in the dark. That's what that looks like. Then the last one definitely just looks like a fetus. Somebody tried to sneak in.
That's a fetus for sure. Or a gray. Maybe they were burying aliens under there. We just don't realize it.
Could have
You
been.
think?
I think that's definitely a possibility that we could talk about here in the future when we talk about who built these things. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Fair enough.
Here are also some pictures of pyramid structures around the world. So you might argue, and I might be inclined to agree with you, that it's not necessarily that all these civilizations that had nothing to do with one another just so happened to build a similar structure because or perhaps they spoke telepathically, or maybe aliens came in and helped them. I might be inclined to believe you if you told me that it's just the fact that the pyramid is the strongest structure, and a lot of people were like, "Hey, you know what? I've been thinking, like, why don't we build it like this, using this basic math that we all understand because we're not totally retarded, and we'll use that to build these giant monuments, and we'll be able to store grain there, or whatever the purpose was for that particular civilization."
It was a pyramid scheme to get the pyramids built.
The guy at the top, like, he was like the head guy. He's like, "I got an idea." He's like, "Why don't you get out there, and the more pyramids that you sell, the more you make, the more the guy above you makes, the more I make, right?" And people would run around with flyers trying to get people to buy pyramids. Or trying to get them to build pyramids, rather, because they didn't need to sell them.
If you lay this brick, then the guy below you lays 2 more bricks. And then we'll be rich, dude. We'll get that. What does he say? And somebody gets a Ferrari.
Yeah, it was him. They know that guy.
Yeah. They knew that guy. Yeah. That's funny. The pyramid scheme was what built the pyramids. Well, I'm sold. That's all I needed to know.
All right. Well, we can close this one out early. Then there's also the Mexico. It was 200 to 900 AD. And I can actually show you some pictures of those too. I have a lot of pictures here today so that you can better understand kind of, what a pyramid looks like, in case you were wondering.
You know what pyramid is in Spanish?
No.
Tortilla chip. Dorito.
It's Dorito.
Dorito.
Over to the como se dice Dorito. Oh, pyramid. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then when I was getting this picture, that family decided to photobomb me too. I had like I didn't have a lot of luck getting these pictures. People kept cutting in front of me. Here's another one of the Mexican location. This is a really nice one. I like this one because it's surrounded by Jurassic Park. Um,
Oh yeah.
and in the middle, that's where they keep the velociraptors.
That's where the fight went down with the Highlander, where he became the Highlander right there.
Is
Pretty
that right?
sure. No.
I'm inclined to believe it. Here's a
I
fun one. Indonesia. Okay, somebody tried to convince me that this was a pyramid, and I want to talk about it. It's anywhere, right? It's 1,500 to 28,000 years old, which is an astounding estimate. Um, and it's by layer. So the way as they've discovered it, and as they've started like clearing the vegetation, they've discovered that some of the layers are only 1,500 years old, but some are 28,000 years old by their best estimate. But they think that this is actually a pyramid, and I'm gonna pull up some more pictures here for you.
it
Uh,
looks like a berm to me, like a berm. Oh, that looks like a
Yeah.
pyramid.
See, now this one looks like one, but I'm not even entirely sure if this is real or not because it looks like somebody's trying to hide a pyramid with a quilt, right? Like
Yeah.
they were like, "Oh, quick, somebody's coming! Put a quilt over the pyramid. Don't let them see it."
Maybe
That's
it's
what
just
that looks like to me.
style, though. Like maybe that's just like somebody saw the pyramids and was like, I saw this shit in Egypt that was off the chain. We should do our own version of it.
And then they said, "Quick, the Egyptians are coming." This is Indonesia, by the way. They're like, "The Egyptians are coming! Quick, cover it up with some
Yeah.
vegetation, please." Well, this is, and then they're like, "Well, it's Egypt, right?
You have
When
to
did they
admit
leave?"
you have to admit that it's more aesthetically pleasing than the other pyramids. It's
Oh,
got
for
grass
sure.
on it, for God's sake.
Well, some of it, yeah, and then the
They're all,
rest of it, they
they're
just
all
caked
their
dirt in it.
pyramids look stupid because there's dirt surrounding them. Our pyramids will look cool because they'll have grass surrounding them, which is I agree.
This reminds me of those people that want to have green like houses that are green or buildings that are green, not green
Yeah, yeah,
houses or green buildings, but like they put the vegetation on the top and then all
yeah.
around it. That's kind of what they did
This
here
is
with this pyramid. It looks like.
it. It looks like they're trying to live in Hobbiton.
Yeah. Hey, we need to get. Can you go get? It's on patch G14. I need you to go get my glasses. I left them up there. G14. That's at the top. That's that brown patch up by the top. And then here's another picture of the same Indonesian pyramid that they're trying to convince me is a pyramid, but this is part of the altar and I don't know. This is what, like I said, they were trying to convince me that these were the
Huh.
pyramids, and I have no reason to doubt them, but I think that their argument it's in need of work.
Well, it looks
Uh,
like a pyramid, so it's hard not to agree that that is a pyramid.
yeah,
If we're saying it's a pyramid that was built by some alien entity, we can't by means connect them all together because we don't know. But if we're just arguing the fact that it is shaped like a pyramid, then I guess yeah, I'm inclined.
how do you like classify something as a pyramid, right? Because I mean, you could have like a little bitty like a rock lying there, and you're like, oh man, look at this. It looks it's like a pyramid, because it's the shape of a pyramid, right? That's technically a pyramid by this definition that we're giving it, right? So who gets to decide what is classified as a pyramid? And I wasn't able to find a lot of other pictures of some of these other ones. For instance, India, Sudan, Hellinikon, or Ellinika, Guaymar, Cholulu, Italy. Italy had one
Yeah,
in 18 to 12
Cholula.
BC.
Hmm.
Cholulu or
Yeah,
Cholula. Yeah,
Cholula.
that's one that was probably in Mexico, I would imagine.
Well, I think okay, to answer your question here, maybe this will help our research a little bit better here. There are people who get to call them at least wonders, right? Like scientists and those types of people, geologists that go, it is a seven wonder, and that's why the pyramids of Giza, right? Is that right? The pyramids of
Yeah,
Giza
yeah, it's in
are
Giza.
are actually one of the seven wonders, is because somebody determined that that falls on a list. So, is that what we're talking about, or are we just talking about pyramids like in general?
Yeah, I think who gets to
Like general,
decide? I get where you're going with that, but who gets to
right?
decide which ones are the great pyramids or the wonders of the world, and who gets to decide like if my rock that I found in my backyard that looks like a pyramid is a pyramid or not? Like where's the cutoff? You know what I'm
It's
saying?
probably
Because
some Poindexter that works at like Parks and Rec or something. It's some Parks and Rec Poindexter that's just like pushes up his glasses. These ones aren't as wondrous as these ones. These ones are
can,
more wondrous.
can you honestly tell? He's like, can you honestly tell me that that strikes wonder in your heart when you look at it or not? Because that's the scientific method of determining whether or not. That's a horrible scientific. Does that strike wonder in your heart? That's the scientific method of determining.
That's to strike wonder. It doesn't strike wonder in my heart.
Nope.
Yeah,
So
I
sorry.
get it. I'm on board.
Okay, I've got something here that I guess you should probably know what the word pyramid comes from. It comes from the Greek word pyramidos, which I mean that seems pretty easy. But pyra or pyra means fire, light, or visible, and midos means measures. So in reality, like literally, the word pyramids comes from the Greek fire, light, or visible measures. All right. Now that's something you should keep, in the back of your mind as we move forward and we talk more about this. Some of the reasons or observations about the pyramids. Here's a fun theory. I'm going to read this for you. Exactly as in Giza, in Mexico, 3 main pyramids are built. The pyramid and the Quetzalcoatl temple, the pyramid of the sun, and the pyramid of the moon. Exactly as in Giza, the planning of the construction is not symmetrical as one might expect. The 2 structures located opposite each other, and the third deliberately shifted to the side. And finally, in Giza, the peaks of the Great Pyramid and the Khafre Pyramid are on the same level, although the height of the first is greater than the second. Similarly, in Mexico, the peaks of the Pyramid of the Sun and the Moon are on the same level, although the first is higher. The different height of the pyramids in both cases compensates for the difference in the base levels. So this is like way back in the BC era. They were doing these kind of like fascinating measurements in order to make sure that everything was the same. And then likewise, this is when you get that comparison between, okay, well, Egypt and Mexico have very similar construction, and they had nothing to do with one another. Like, they didn't know each other. There was no way for them to communicate with one another. I'd be surprised if they even knew either one or the other even lived. So that was a fascinating little tidbit that I found. So
But aren't they like didn't we talk about this before? Aren't they like geographically connected somehow? Like, isn't there some sort of connection at least?
Yeah.
Like, okay, that's my question, right? Like, I know you probably have something prepared for this, and I feel like a jerk for not, looking up to find out what we're talking about. But I'm curious, like, about the connection of these pyramids, and like, this is where my like theories kind of jump off. I go, well, this could be this. This is what I think about it logically. What I think is are they like a device, right? Like, are the pyramids actually a device of some sort? And so I wonder how they are connected across the globe, right? Like the ones in what's it called, Mexico, and the ones in Egypt. Is there some sort of connection at all?
Yeah.
Or am I just asking questions to like?
I don't actually remember if I included this information in here because, and only because, I struggled to find anything that was consistent and across at least all the pyramids or the Great Pyramids. But I did find that Indonesia, and then Egypt, and then Mexico, they all fall like almost directly across the same parallel, right? They almost line up perfectly across, like all the way around the world, or across if you're into the true Earth. But they all fall.
Is that what you're saying?
There is one, yeah. There is one in that case. Some of the smaller ones, there aren't. And there's also another fascinating thing that is going to come up later about how they were built and how there's further interesting connections there. So
Okay.
Let's talk about who built them, though. Who do you think, based on what you know now, V, who do you think built the pyramids?
Based on the knowledge that I have right now, well, mine goes to what I learned as a child. The Egyptians, had the slaves build the pyramids. The Jews, right? Didn't the Jews build the pyramids? That's the ones in Giza, that's my understanding, is that the Egyptians had the Jews build the pyramids for them. They were slaves. That's what I know based on books that I've read as a child. As far as like theories go, I don't know. I would like to think that they're there for some other reason. I would like to think that the pyramids themselves are some sort of device. Like there's some purpose to them that they've still existed this long, you know? That's my theory. That's what I kind of would like to believe. Like if we're talking about what I believe is they were built by the Jews because the Egyptians had them as slaves. What I'd like to believe is that there's another purpose for them, something that we don't understand or weren't given enough information, or maybe something that like as much as I say it's not paranormal, well, maybe it could be something alien. Who knows? I'd like to believe that. So I'm waiting for an argument. That's why I'm going to be very interested. Like unlike how I normally am, I'm going to actually pay attention to what you're saying this time because I want to know like where my camp is in this aspect. So that's my stance. If that's what we're getting at here, that's
Yeah.
where I kind of jump around, but I'm ready to believe something else, I
Okay.
guess.
Well, hopefully, excuse me. Hopefully, I'll be able to convince you that there is something, that it is fucking paranormal, dude. Because there's some fascinating theories here, and even ones that are in line with what you said, the historical belief of the Jews building them, right?
Right.
The Egyptian ones, at least. There are some theories. There are some things that cast doubt on even that, and then there's somewhat legitimate ones based on like timeline and actual historical timelines and archaeological digs. So here's what I'll tell you: the slaves. Here's the theory on slaves building them. Okay. Uh,
Okay.
Actually, let me see. Do I have? I don't have anything on the slaves. Okay. Um, just wanted to verify. The slaves supposedly. So here's the thing: ancient Egypt was supposedly a slave country, both Jewish and non-Jewish. They had slaves of many different demographics. Researchers believe that the biblical story of the Jews in Egypt was actually about their time in Babylon, which would have fallen later in the Isaiah time frame. And then they believe that Hyksos, which is a Semitic Asian descent, like so Chinese Jews, were the ones sent out of Egypt in the original Genesis story, right? And then the pyramids were already old by the time that the Jews settled in the Nile Delta. This is the time in which Joseph relocated his family, the Joseph of the many colored coats.
I
Uh,
do. I know that story well.
right.
That's
They
one of my
were,
biblical stories.
the pyramids were actually already there. They were actually already very old by the time that happened. And the Jews moved to Egypt as free people, but when Pharaoh died, he didn't have. This is for the people who don't know the story. They moved there as free people, the Jews did. But then, as soon as the Pharaoh that liked Joseph and was Joseph was like his, like a governor basically.
He was
Uh,
his road dog. He'd interpreted his dreams.
right, right. But
Yeah,
he
came
was
as road.
also given a lot of responsibilities in like architecture and managing various different things. And he moved his family and then the Jews at large into the Nile Delta, which was a very fertile area, a very nice area to live. Um, and once the pharaoh, it was a new pharaoh, he didn't really know Joseph, so he was like, all of a sudden he was like, well, what are all these Jews doing here? And that's when they became slaves. So researchers believe that the pyramids were built by paid laborers and skilled craftsmen. So that's the like a newer theory that researchers have come to realize, that the pyramids, for them to be built that way, it probably wasn't just slaves, like just a bunch of people being whipped and forced to move blocks around. They think it was legitimately like skilled labor that put these pyramids together. And based on the craftsmanship that's lasted thousands of years, there's I think that gives that theory some teeth.
Right.
And Egyptologists state that building projects were not undertaken with slave labor. So those are some things that are worth considering as far as the slave theory. There are a lot of people who believe that they were built by the slaves, and there's probably not going to be any convincing those people that they weren't built by slaves, but there's a lot of archaeological history or archaeology that has unearthed new theories about it not actually having been slave labor that did it. Uh, then there's, let's see here, I've got Joseph, right? Joseph built them. People think that Joseph was in charge of building the pyramids. And not talking about Joseph, Jesus's earthly father, but Joseph of what do you call it, of Genesis. Let me see.
Many
I have
colors. Joseph, coat of many colors. That's how I know him.
Yeah, that's the guy. So I have some
Yeah.
pictures here. They base that theory on the quote squared stone and rubble. Joseph had built the pyramids to store wheat grain. And he gathered up all the food for 7 years, if you remember this story from Genesis 41, 48 to 49. He gathered up all the food and of the 7 years when there was plenty in the land of Egypt, and stored it in the food in the cities, or stored up the food in the cities. And Joseph stored up the grain in great abundance, like the sand of the sea, until he ceased to measure it. It could not be measured. So
Is
when the
this
famine,
is this Cher right here? Is that
it
Cher?
kind of looks like it. Yeah. If you want to live, right?
It's got to be her. That must be where she got the look, at least.
She looks like she's thousands of years old.
Yeah, that is true.
I like her on South Park when they do impressions of her, and she's like,
Yeah, they distort her voice. Yeah, it's
uh,
fun.
and then you've got
Let's just
Genesis.
also
Go
from
ahead.
from here on out, if we're going to talk about Joseph, can we call him Rainbow Joe?
Rainbow Joe. Yeah, we can.
Yeah,
I don't have
Rainbow
any attachment to Rainbow Joe. Um, so, so when the famine had spread over the land, Rainbow Joe opened up all the storehouses and sold to the Egyptians. This is the stuff that was during the 7 years of famine. He was able to feed the
Right.
Egyptians.
Yeah.
And
And then
then,
his brothers showed up, right? His brothers showed up and they were all like, "Oh, dude, we're sorry we sold you into slave labor. Can you be our homie now?"
yeah, well, that's how they ended up coming to him. And as you know, like by that time, the pyramids would have been old. So if he was using them to store grain and wheat, then yeah, absolutely, that would make sense that the slaves they weren't Jewish. So then Rainbow Joe said, "Give me charge of the granaries of the land; I shall husband them wisely." And this actually, that passage actually comes from the Quran, the Holy Quran, right?
Hmm.
Starring Muhammad, peace be upon
Can,
him.
can can we? I don't mean to interrupt you, but can we do like a little backstory on Rainbow Joe? And I know I love the story, so I kind of wanted to give like just
Please,
a little bit backstory on Rainbow Joe. Okay,
please.
so Rainbow Joe had all these brothers and his dad. What was his dad's name?
Are you talking about? Oh boy, I'm
Is it,
terrible at this
is
because it's either Isaac or Jacob. Which one is it?
I think it's Jacob. I'm going with
Okay,
Jacob.
I
So his
confuse the two.
dad his dad really likes him, right? He sees him as this like good entity of good, and he to like show him that, he gives him this coat of many colors, right? This like fancy ass coat. And it immediately, which like obviously this would happen, so his dad's kind of an idiot for doing this. His brothers immediately get jealous and like beat his ass. Like they beat the shit out of him, and then they toss him out, and then they rip his thing, and they make everybody think that he's dead, and then they go and they sell him into slavery, right? And so then he goes into slavery, right? And he's like horrible life. He's treated like shit, and then like his owner's wife comes onto him, right? Am I good so far? This is correct,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
His owner's wife comes onto him, and he like dips out, like he doesn't even bang her. He like panics, runs away naked, right? Runs away naked, and like then gets thrown in jail because she says that he tried to rape her, right? Which is like what, like this is so shitty, right? Like shitty situation. But I love
Women
this.
never change, V.
Yeah, women never change. But I love this story because of the redemption. Like he stayed true to his ideals, right? So he's in jail and he meets these people that start telling him his dreams, and he starts interpreting them. Like, this is what happened in your dream, dude. This is what happened in your dream, right? And people are like blown away, like that he's able to interpret these dreams. So in the meantime, this shit is going down with the pharaoh where he's having dreams. And so somebody hears about Joseph and goes, "Hey man, there's this dude that we just locked up, that supposedly can interpret dreams." And so he gets Joseph in the same room with him to interpret his dream. And it has something to do with cows, right? A skinny cow and a fat cow. And basically what Joseph,
Seven skinny cows and seven fat cows.
seven skinny. And so it has to do with years and food, right? And so, of course, that's how Joseph interprets it and tells him, look, you're going to have 7 years of fat harvest, but 7 years of bad harvest. So make sure you save for these 7 years, for those oncoming 7 years. And it proved true. So the pharaoh was like, "Oh, dude, you are my dog. Like this dude is a G. Like give him everything. Like give him freaking his own fiefdom or whatever they had, and like make him in charge of all this shit, right?" So he was like an advisor, right? He like rose up from being like thrown out by like his ass beat by his brother, thrown out, sold into slavery, and now he's like a G, like he's living like a G. And then when the famine comes, his brothers actually show up to ask for help from him, but they don't know that it's him. They just know that it's this guy that they have to go ask for help. And when they go and they beg for him to help, he says, "Of course I will." And then tells them that he's their brother, and they're just like blown away. Like I would be blown away. Like, dude, I treated you like a dick, and here you are still being cool to us, even though we threw you out. And like that's the story of Joseph, right? He didn't change throughout all that. He was still like a good person, like deserving of that coat, right? Is that accurate? Would you say that's like, although crass and like,
No, I think that's perfect. I think that's a good way
yeah,
to. I think that's the best way to get through to a lot of people when telling stories, biblical stories.
yeah,
Sometimes you have to be crass because, and what's funny is if you look at Moses supposedly wrote the first 5 books of the Bible of the Old Testament, and I think Moses was a bit of a comedian, and the more you read in Genesis and some of the Torah, right, the original 5 books of the Bible, there's another word for it, but I forget. But it's the law. That's the portion of the Bible that's considered the law.
right.
And he actually wrote some very funny things in there that are like really subtly funny. For instance, the Joseph story. He said when he was interpreting dreams, one of the 2 guys that talked to him, one guy he said, "Your head will be lifted up," and so on and so forth. He's talking about the dream, and he said, "But by that I mean you're going to be celebrated." You're going to be celebrated and rewarded with all these great things and everything. You're going to be released from prison. It's going to be awesome. And the dude's like, "All right, cool." And then the second guy comes up and he tells him the dream. And then Joseph says, "Your head will also be lifted up." And then he's like, "Oh, nice." And he goes, "By that I mean you're going to be executed. You're going to be beheaded, and your head will be lifted up." So that was how that dream interpretation session went. And then, no shit, that's exactly how it played out. The first guy who was rewarded and made part of, the pharaoh's posse, he was like, "Hey, this guy in jail, he actually told me that this would happen." And then the other guy got his head lopped off.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay.
Uh, so, yeah, and then we have I lack tact actually said Jacob was Joseph's father. I honestly I confused them. Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, I guess is how it's in order. Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob was the father of the 12 tribes, so that would make sense. AKA Israel was his name that he was given. He who struggles with God. So that's how I remember. I don't ever remember it as Jacob or Isaac or anything. I just go that route. So that's Joseph or Rainbow Joe built the pyramids.
Yeah,
So this
Rainbow
is the.
Joe.
We'll go back to that real quick. Here they are. That theory has been around since the 6th century. It wasn't until the Renaissance when people were traveling to the region to investigate the implausibility of that theory. U.S. presidential candidate Ben Carson, if you remember him, Sleepy Ben, the Sleepy Doctor, I think is what we called him in 2016. He actually cited the theory, saying various scientists have said, well, there were alien beings that came down and they have special knowledge, and that's how. And then he once hypothesized that the pyramids were where pharaohs would store their. I don't remember somebody must have said this on Discord, and I wrote it down. Republican candidate hopeful Ben Carson once hypothesized that the pyramids were where Pharaoh would store their anime girl figurines. I wrote that, and then I wrote judge on Discord, so I assume that was somebody in our Discord chat when we brought up the pyramids.
Yeah.
And I totally forgot that I had written that there, so I started reading it as if it was a real fact. But
I believed you first half.
it sounded legit. And then moving on to the Illuminati. I think I actually skipped one. Aliens, right? Aliens. Let me see here.
Like the dude with the funky hair on the History Channel.
Yeah, it was.
This is what he's always talking about.
Yeah. This is one of my favorite news articles, right? Especially since this is what we're dealing with now today with everything. Pseudo-archaeologists and the racism behind ancient aliens. Somehow somebody was able to make an entire article in this publication. I don't even remember what publication it was. Probably Vice or something. About racism and how it applies to the ancient aliens theories. So let's talk about the aliens building it. The speed of light. Now, this is where the theory comes from, okay? I'm going to give you all the facts that I have. The speed of light is 299,792,458 meters per second, and is the geographic, at the same time, it's the geographic coordinates for the Great Pyramid, right? 29.9792 degrees north. So that is exactly the number of millions that it's comparable, right? 299,792 million, or let's say it like this: 299.792 million meters per second, and then the coordinates are 29.9792. So like the first 6 digits are exactly the same, which is kind of an interesting little. It's a fascinating tidbit, right? And I would think that somebody who had the ability for interstellar travel at that time would probably have gone to that location and planted it there as like a sign to later warn people who figured it out. Oh, these pyramids were built by somebody who had an understanding of the speed of light. That's where that theory comes from. Elon Musk recently tweeted, aliens built the pyramids, obviously. He tweeted that on July 31st, 2020. He followed it up by saying Ramesses II was, and then the Great Pyramid was the tallest structure made by humans for 3,800 years. 3,800 years. He also provided a link and said the BBC article provides a sensible summary for how it was done. So not only did he tweet some weird thing where you're like, what? But it's Elon Musk, right? He tweets weird shit. But then he also backed it up with a BBC article.
But do we consider Elon Musk a reliable source? Like,
I do.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I will agree the guy is smart. He's trying to go to Mars and all that. He's got a lot of money. I do know that much about him. But can we honestly say that he's a credible source? Like, is he the type of person that goes, you guys need to know this, so I'm going to share it to you regardless of... Like, is Elon Musk the one saying about the conspiracies and trying to tell us the truth? Or is he trying to cover it up?
I don't know. And that's the fascinating thing that you brought up. We talk about this a lot, about how technology is given to us by aliens, right?
Right.
We joke about how Apple... There was no technological advancements in cell phones for, like, years and years. From the creation of the cell phone until the Apple iPhone, it was just basically still the same thing. And then all of a sudden Apple came out with all this shit, and it's just spiraled out of control. And we see how there are periods where nothing happens. VR, nothing happens for decades, and then all of a sudden it just drops on us and we've got all this new tech.
Right.
The guy he's like involved in space travel, right? And he has all these ideas, multi-billion-dollar corporation, involved in all sorts of technology. And he's telling us this thing, just very point blank, of, well, the aliens built the pyramids, obviously. And that's what he believes. But he also, at the same time, he tweets some weird stuff to be funny. Like, he tweets about anime girls and shit like that. And he does it just to be funny. He does a lot of memes and all that. But I think a lot of that has to do with him trying to somehow distance people in general. So he can say, well, I gave them this information, but I don't want to seem like I'm giving them this information outright. I want them to have to work for it and trust me. Whether or not they trust me, that's on them. Now, they can believe in aliens, and I just told them that aliens exist, but they're going to see all my anime girl tweeting and my memes, and they're going to think, oh, this guy's an idiot. So then there's going to be guys like us who are like, well, that makes sense.
I guess that's what I'm asking here is, like, is he an idiot? Like, what are his actual credentials? Like, is Elon Musk as smart as everybody thinks he is, or is he just a rich guy like Bill Gates?
It's a good
like,
question.
does he just have a lot of money that he's given to people to do things for him? Is he the Wile E. Coyote of the United States, you know, or the Dmitry Itzkov with all the billions of dollars just going in to fund his own immortality? That's my question. Like, what's the motive? If somebody's rich, they have a motive for what they're doing. The guy wants to go to Mars. We know that. You know, I won't argue that Elon Musk probably knows something that we don't. I won't argue that, but I'll only concede to that because he is in the elite, quote unquote, ruling class, right?
Yeah.
Is that a fair? Would you say that's a fair
I wouldn't
argument?
say he's in the ruling class. I would say that he's just a guy. Now I can argue that well maybe he's just a rich guy. Um, all right, we'll see you later. I like tact. Thank you for joining us. Uh, and in fact, while we're on that, excuse me, I'm gonna plug his show. Go find his thing. Plug your thing. Give your on
I like
Twitter.
what he said. I like what he said about being a fat kid out of dodgeball.
Yeah, leave your so that people can go there, and I'll plug your stream and all that stuff. You can actually go to his if you go to his Twitter account, he has his Twitch information there. You can click on it and you can follow him there. It's one of the only Twitches that it's actually the only Twitch I watch anymore, honestly. And he plays a lot of games that I personally don't play, but it gives me a chance to see what some of you guys are talking about when you talk about like Final Fantasy and Valheim and all that shit. The stuff that I've never played and I really have no interest in playing.
Valheim. What the fuck is Valheim? Did you just
See?
make that?
No, it's a real thing, and I might be saying the
Dude.
wrong title, but no, it's like it's a game where you're Odin forces you like you die, and then Odin makes you go become a beet farmer. I'm being honest. This is the way he described it
No,
to me.
Valheim isn't a place. That can't be true.
Yeah, well, no, he sends them to this unknown realm, and you have to go there and become a beet farmer and redeem yourself, and then by redeeming yourself, you have to go and fight off all these monsters and shit. But yeah, I watched him play that game. It was pretty cool. So that's where I go to. I originally started just going there just to support a friend, but now I watch his shit because I'm like, well, let me see what the big deal is with these games. But yeah, I think anybody in the chat who's listening, who's actively listening, let us know whether or not you find Elon Musk to be a reliable source for
Yeah, that's a good
information.
question.
And just so we can kind of get a gauge of like who among us supports him or not. I support him. I think that he's not part of this elite ruling class. I think he's just a guy who had a ton of money and he decided to use it to further scientific advancement, and maybe he knows nothing about it. But maybe because of what he's done, he's become privy to some of this information that he's now giving to us. Now imagine if you or I all of a sudden came into billions of dollars and we had a very successful organization because we're successful and shrewd businessmen. And then we're still just dudes who want to talk about aliens and stuff.
Yeah, right.
So
Okay.
I think that might be the situation with Elon Musk. He may know nothing about science, but he may have been it may have been brought to his attention that aliens exist and that aliens did this, that, and the other, and he's trying to relay that information. But at the same time, he wants to tweet about anime girls and memes. So I think that might be the case with Elon Musk. I think he's just a regular dude who came into a bunch of money, kind of like what's his face, Kim Jong Un. I think he's just a regular dude who got thrust into power because he was next in line. And I think he's probably a really cool dude, but he was thrust into power at what 20 some years old, and he was forced to take over this dictatorship regime. And so he had to act a certain way. Like Putin is another example. Putin inherited this communist country, and the only way to get through to communists is with a iron fist. So he had to adopt this, even though they now operate supposedly in this democracy or in this this free nation. He has to still treat them like they're communists, because that's what they grew up doing. And the only way you can make a communist work is by forcing them to work. So I think a lot of these world leaders, and as well as some of our elite individuals in the public view, I think a lot of them are just regular dudes who were forced into a bad situation and had to do things a certain way and had to kind of fit into this narrow image of what was expected of them. But in reality, he just wants to retweet anime nudes. So I don't know. I think he does.
I'll agree with that, only based on the fact that I had the same argument with you last week. I think it was last week when I came at you about actors that like just want to act, like they're pushed into this role because that's just the industry, but they want to act still. So they're like, well, I guess I'll just do it so that I can act. Like you have to Like I have to agree with you just based on that because that to me says there are probably some rich people out there like Elon Musk that are just like, I'll play the game, but I'm still going to do my own thing and still be me, and whatever. So I guess I can agree with that.
And then he
Um,
makes a flamethrower.
yeah, in terms of like his credibility, I'll still say that I don't think that he's totally credible, but I'll give you the benefit of the doubt on him.
Let's be honest. Who is credible anymore? Like you can't trust anybody. Like
Yeah.
we're even us, but we make it a point to say, well, we're not trustworthy. Like don't trust it.
Yeah.
Don't believe everything that we say. We're just presenting you what we know and then our opinions or whatever. Don't
Yeah.
run out and shoot up a school because we said something about alien invasion or some shit.
Right.
And the CIA turning people into or activating the MK Ultra codes.
Hmm.
And here's the other one: Illuminati. Right. The Illuminati was officially founded in 1785, and I think I even wrote the notes for this one with like this big ass grain of salt because I didn't even believe it, but it was a theory, so I had to bring it up. The Illuminati was officially founded in 1785. Now, the pyramid with the eye on top as their symbol, with the Latin phrase one from many, Illuminati scholars state that the Latin actually means New World Order, and the eye on the pyramid and the eye of Horus point to the Illuminati's power through time. So I guess this is like
The
a
Eye of
theory.
Horus. I thought it was the Eye of Agamotto.
No, that's from Lord of the Rings you're thinking of.
It's Sauron's eye.
You're thinking
That's,
of. I'm
I
sorry.
always.
You're thinking of Harry Potter. It's the same eye. It's just one eye with many faces. The
Mhm.
theory was proposed in a popular book series from the 1960s, and it was popular with the hippie movement, used as a means of critiquing power elites. They began praying in the pyramids to collect its power and energy, and they would attempt to sneak into the pyramids, but were chased off by security for trespassing. And then the Illuminati was disbanded 20 years after their following. So, or after their founding, I'm sorry. Which we all know that's not true. We know that the Illuminati still exists. So, again, a lot of this bullshit was, I don't know anything about the Illuminati building the pyramids, but the idea of the Illuminati having power throughout time is fascinating to me. And I think that there might be something to that, and perhaps we can address that on a You Had Me at Illuminati episode, assuming they don't,
Yeah,
like,
I
murder
think we
us.
should. I think we should just because I don't know a lot about the Illuminati, and also because I hear a lot about it. Like people constantly complaining that it's because of the Illuminati or blaming it on the Illuminati. One of my cousins used to always talk about the Illuminati and how he couldn't do anything because of the Illuminati. But granted, he had like a addiction to amphetamines, so he had some problems himself. But that being said, it still intrigues me that there are people out there that's where they think their problems come from is like an elite society that's preventing them from doing anything. So
Well,
it's
then
interesting.
definitely we can talk
I'll
about that.
agree. Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
So, what were the pyramids? What do you think they were, V? Like, if you had, based on what you know, what do you know the pyramids are used for, or what they are?
Based on what I know,
Yeah.
information that I have from textbooks growing up in school is that they were used to put the pharaoh's bodies in. They were just graves basically for a rich pharaoh. The pharaoh dies, and then everybody else has to die with him. So he goes, they bury his ass at the bottom of this pyramid with all his shit because you can take all your shit with you in that religion or whatever in their beliefs, right? That's what they believed is you could take all your shit with you on the river Styx, and Ra or whoever Horus, boated you across the ocean there, and then
Well, it
all
was
of
a
his
river. It was
yeah
a
the river,
river.
all of these his slaves and like his servants had to die with him because he was taking them with him to the afterlife. So if you were a pharaoh's servant, you were dying when the pharaoh died, right? And that's what the pyramid is to house all of his shit. It's like to me, that's my understanding, is it's just a giant grave site to this one pharaoh or pharaohs or whatever. That's what I know. It also could be like a way to contact Megatron on Cybertron. That's also what I think it put. I'd like to believe that pyramids are actually some way of contacting something. It seems logical because first of all, pyramids, like you said, have to do with light generally, right? So if the word for it has to do with light, then wouldn't light have something to do with like contacting people or sending a message or something? So maybe like logically, that's just me going theorizing, right? I'm just jabbing into space here. Maybe they were some sort of device to like contact people in outer space, or I don't know. Who knows? I would
Yeah,
think.
well, you're on the right track. Um, I think you hit the nail on the head. No, I mean, there's really no like legitimate theory for them beyond that. Like that seems like everybody's belief of what the pyramids are, right?
Right.
But I have a few theories here that I want to talk about. Three of them actually, uh, that are that were interesting to me, and I felt were interesting enough to bring up on the show here. Um, Let me see. I'll just do them in order. So some say that it was, and this is in line with your thought. It's believed to have been built as a tomb for the pharaoh Khufu, also known as Cheops. Right? These are just silly names that I think
Good name.
I have no idea if they're real or not, or if somebody's messing with me.
Fucking the
I'd have no
roach.
way of knowing.
He
Um,
was a chotch. This guy, he was a fucking chotch.
Chopsy, yeah.
Yeah.
Joni loves Chopsy. I love. Can I point out that I love that you said when you were talking about the pharaohs traveling on to the afterlife, you said they can take it with them on the river Styx, and then Horus would transport them across the ocean, as if you hadn't just said the river Styx and knew that it was a river.
Yeah.
So it's the ocean Styx. Like you have to. It ends up being a super long journey. You thought it was like
Yeah.
a short thing, but it's not. Fascinating thing about that is they used to tuck the Book of the Dead in, well, it was a scroll, into the pocket of the dead, so that they would know how to traverse this afterlife in order to
Didn't they do
get
the
to
coin thing too? The coin on the eye?
I
Or
think
the
they left them with some gold in order to pay the toll, the toll farer. What do they call them?
ferryman. You got to
The
pay the
ferryman.
ferryman.
There it is.
Yeah.
That's who they used to pay to get to ride the boat across the ocean Styx.
Sure.
The the lake Styx. Just all the wrong bodies of water. The pond
Yeah. The
Styx.
fjord sticks.
The road Styx, and then we it becomes like this whole big mess. The desert Styx. They're like, wait a minute, where are you getting any of this information from? One theory that I thought was really fascinating is they think it's Noah's Ark. They think that the pyramids are Noah's Ark. And I can actually pull up images because I know you're thinking, you're like, what?
Yeah, isn't Noah's Ark on Mount Ararat? Right?
No, I think you're thinking of Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom.
No, no. Mount Ararat. That's where the Noah's Ark, they found it up there, didn't they?
Oh,
Didn't
I
they
don't know.
find pieces of
Are
Noah's Ark?
you talking about something that you saw in the National Enquirer or one of those Bat Boy magazines or something?
Maybe. That could be true.
I think
I
we
know it's
live
Mount
in
Ararat.
I think we live in a time where if something like Noah's Ark was discovered, word would travel fast, probably. And well, then again, maybe not. I don't know because they
Well, I
might
thought
try to
Mount
hide
Ararat is like sacred, like you can't go up there.
that. So it's kind of like the Valley of the Hidden Men or the Headless Men or whatever.
Yeah.
It's
Can't
sacred.
go there.
That's where Noah's Ark is, as I understand it.
Yeah.
It would have to be. I would imagine that Noah's Ark would have to be in that area because it would have to be in the Middle East, right? Because that's where civilization kind of spread from. So it has to be in that area. It seems like it wouldn't be that difficult. I might have to look into that. Right?
It's Mount Ararat.
Remind me later, and we'll look into that.
I'm telling
together.
you, Mount Ararat.
Historian Matthew Simpson. This is his theory. So if you have a problem with it, take it up with Matthew Simpson. He believes that the pyramids are actually Noah's Ark, and it's based on the debate over the Greek word. He connects the pyramids to the Ark. Using translations of the Dead Sea Scrolls and medieval Italian artists, he states the idea of a pyramid-shaped ark, of course, makes us think of ancient Egypt, and we know that Egypt features heavily in the Old Testament. So right here is where 90% of the scrolls were found here in this Judean desert, right? If you were ever curious, there was this one little cavern that somebody tucked all the Dead Sea Scrolls into.
I
And
see.
if you were ever wondering where these Dead Sea Scrolls keep popping up from, uh, right here you see the panels of this elaborate door to the baptistry in Florence by Lorenzo Ghiberti illustrate scenes from the Old Testament. And one of the panels on the left hand side, second from the top, illustrates the life of Noah, and in particular the period after the Great Flood when Noah returns to dry land with the help of God. Strangely, the ark is depicted as a pyramid. And I think I actually have a closer
I was
picture
gonna
of
say it's
that.
hard to see. Yeah.
No, I don't have. Oh, no, I do. I do. There we go. So
Oh
this is
yeah.
actually the image.
Huh. Huh. That's interesting.
So that's where that theory comes from, and like I said, from the Dead Sea Scrolls. Let me actually burn through these real quick. If you want to know what the Dead Sea Scrolls look like, if you've never looked into it, this is kind of what they look like, and then the actual writing and why it takes so long when they find the Dead Sea Scrolls to actually translate it into something useful. This is kind of what they're working with. So that's just for your guys. It's just a fun little fact for you. Um, and then I have some more pictures of. I don't know why I saved that picture. That's a picture of Noah's Ark, in case you were wondering.
Is that the actual arc?
No, but it's just pictures of it. I went,
That's
actually
what.
went to that the Ark Encounter here in Kentucky. It's not far from me, about 45 minutes away from me. We went to it not too long ago, and it's actually a to scale replica of what the Ark looked like. And if
Oh
ever
yeah.
you're kind of like, well, there's no way they could have fit all the animal or two of every animal on that boat and
Yeah.
been able to survive, and like the way that this Ark is constructed based on actual biblical and scriptural regulation, like their architecture or whatever. It's actually pretty amazing. It's huge. It's massive, and it takes a full day for you to get through the whole thing and actually like look at everything and read everything and all that. Very very cool thing to check out. If you ever find your way down to northern Kentucky, it's there. Same thing with the Creation Museum. It's the same company that does both. And then we have advanced technology. So let me zip back here.
Like what? Like aliens?
Yeah, well, this is what they're talking about as far as what's in the pyramids or what they're used for. In the 1990s, a secret door was discovered inside one of the Great Pyramids with red writing on the outside. Zahi Hawass, who's an Egyptian architecture or archaeologist, allowed a robot to drill a small hole and peek inside. He said nothing was found, but refused to give the videotapes as proof. The Egyptian government forbade researchers from abroad to look for themselves. And then this
Huh.
spawned a host of conspiracy theories that the chamber had great treasure or alien corpses that would disprove religion, that sort of
They
stuff.
just they found Apocalypse, the first mutant. That's what happened.
Here's one fun thing. Like we were talking about how light, referring to light, they think that the pyramid was a power plant dating all the way back. You can see here, this is their understanding of it. I'm not scientifically intelligent enough to describe what's happening, but here's what they believe is going on in that chamber and how they were actually able to power uh, perhaps Egypt or power ancient equipment that maybe has been hidden from us. But this is the one that fascinates me when it comes to Egypt and ancient technology, or I'm sorry, advanced technology in ancient Egypt. These are some hieroglyphics, and you can see here they've got what looks like a helicopter, and then they've got maybe a blimp or a UFO, a couple of them. These are actual hieroglyphics that were found, and I think when you start seeing stuff like that, and you start considering the possibility that there's something going on in ancient Egypt that maybe we don't know, or we aren't being told. I think that this sort of thing starts to gain a lot of
What do the
traction.
what do those look like to you? Like
Well,
what would you say? Like, okay, let's examine this here real quick. Like, what do these hieroglyphics look like to you? I mean, the first one is a little obvious, but I'm curious what you're saying here.
So, are you talking about the bug on the left, like the mosquito?
Yeah, the bug. It's obviously a bug, right?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't read hieroglyphics, so I don't. I know it has a lot to do with what the image is, and then in some cases, people adopted like personas in ancient Egypt,
Yeah,
and so
yeah,
they would
sure.
have, they would have like an alligator, or the
Yeah,
pharaohs often looked like a giant furry dog. But so that a lot of that plays into it. But if I were to, some of that looks like Sumerian writing too, in the middle there, and then you see maybe a bird, but and then a half pipe or a quarter pipe. Um, but in
yeah.
reality, if I was
That
looking
doesn't
at
look like a
this,
spaceship to you above the
that
quarter pipe.
that's what I'm saying is that looks just like a blimp or a spaceship. And if you look at it and you try to say, well, let's look at it from the perspective of somebody who was living in 2000 BC, or
Right.
anywhere from 2 to 5000 BC. Let's look at it from their perspective. What did they have back then that maybe looked like that? And I can't think of anything.
No, I was gonna say I can't think of anything. What the fuck?
Especially the helicopter. That's, I mean,
I
it's
mean,
very clearly a
it could be
helicopter,
like
but
Aladdin's magic stinking lamp, but I don't know. That's a
that's even a
stretch.
stretch. Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Uh,
a stretch.
it
That
looks to
looks like
me
a
like a
spaceship.
UFO.
Yeah, that looks like a spaceship.
And then you've got
It has a fin.
the one above it looks like Luke Skywalker's land speeder.
Yeah, it does. And behind that looks like a helicopter, kind of.
Yeah. So it all looks like stuff that we identify now because we
Yeah.
have that understanding. But to them back then, I can't imagine what they were trying to draw. Yeah, Mike even said land speeder.
Yeah.
um, I don't know. It's hard to describe this one. And then the only excuse that people have given online about it is that it's not what we think it is. But then they don't elaborate further. It's just one of those, they try to dismiss it right away so that nobody's thinking about it.
Right.
All right. And then we're actually almost done here, so we're right on time. And
Oh,
then we
nice.
have uh let me zip back to this one. I don't know where I am. Where am I?
You're blowing it, dude.
I know I'm I'm screwing the show up, the whole show.
Yeah.
Uh this right here, we're back to the energy source. It says the KGB researched the pyramids of Giza. And there was a report detailing a strange electromagnetic power field surrounding them. During the inspection of the wall segment, we noted an odd sensation. A magnetic repulsive force seemed to be emanating from the rock, and we were unable to find any scientific explanation. Claims like the Tesla coil and that the pyramids could transfer energy to the Mayan pyramids. And that's one of the connections that people made, was that that's one of the connections that they had. They were able to transfer communications to the Mayan pyramid. And its ability to concentrate electric and magnetic energy was discovered by a team of researchers led by scientists from ITMO University in the Russian city of St. Petersburg. They created a model of the pyramid to measure its electromagnetic response. The model was used to see how wave energy is scattered or absorbed by the pyramid, and the group tested the interaction with waves of resonant length ranging from 200 meters to 600 meters. So there's something going on in there that even the KGB couldn't figure out. And this is all documented. There's an actual study that they did, and it's all available for you to read. There's something weird going on in the pyramids. So
Yeah, there's no
that's
arguing that. I'll agree. I'll agree. Yeah.
So here's the final thing that I did want to address, and it was brought up in the chat earlier, about the connection between astrological connections and the pyramids. So there's one theory, right, that there's a connection between Orion's belt and the three largest pyramids in Egypt. So Orion's belt is obviously part of the constellation Orion. It's the one that you see most often. It's so easy to see. They're the brightest stars within that constellation, and it runs across Orion's waist, so like very much like a belt. And it's
Mhm.
associated with Osiris, the god of rebirth in the afterlife. Additional pyramids can be added to make up the Orion constellation. So when you go further into it, and if you want to talk about, Orion as the entire constellation, you can apparently do that. But the argument is best made referring to the position with Orion's belt. And the theory has been published. Oh, I'm sorry, the Nile River can be included to match the Milky Way. So it all kind of astrologically, it all kind of, or astronomically, I guess, it all lines up with these constellations and the Milky Way and and all that stuff. And it's a fascinating thing to dive into. It's been published in Discussions of Egyptology, Volume 13, back in 1989. This is not a new theory. The Orion Mystery in 1994, The Great Pyramids, Gateway to the Stars in 1994, and then a bunch of New Age books. So you can see here we've got that one. You can look here, a comparison of them side by side. And then here's where you look at it. In China, we have the Xi'an pyramids, then Mexico, their pyramids, then Egypt, the Great Pyramids, and then Orion's Belt. You can see how they all kind of follow that same pattern. And then actually, if you look at the Earth, a map of the Earth, and then you run, like I said, it runs along that same parallel, very comparable to Orion's Belt, where one is just offset just slightly, and that would be the one in China, is just offset just slightly. So, or straight across, you end up in the Indonesia one. So, very fascinating theory that people have presented, and I could really go ahead.
I was to say it's too much of a coincidence for that not to be something. It feels like for all three of them to be like that, you know, and then the number three even, like all those things kind of connect, you know. So it definitely makes you question what they thought about the stars at the very least.
Yeah, and then even what we talked about earlier about the speed of light being exactly the same as the coordinates for the Great Pyramids in Egypt. So
Right.
there's something to that. When people talk about aliens building the pyramids, I used to laugh it off. Like, come on, like they're way Occam's razor, like you mentioned earlier. Like, it's way more realistic to believe that over the course of however many hundreds, thousands of years, they were able to build these pyramids and using human labor. Like, I don't think it's that difficult to recognize how structurally sound pyramids are, and
Yeah.
then create something that you could use as for whatever purpose they were using it as. But then you start to think about all these coincidences, like the speed of light and the geographic coordinates, and then you've got how all of them are in the same offset pattern, and you've got all of them looking like the same constellation, and then you've got this stuff from the KGB where they released all these electromagnetic things, and then how you're not allowed to look into this chamber within the pyramids. Very, like, if you wanted to dispel rumors and conspiracies, you should just release that stuff. When you don't release seemingly innocent stuff, that's extremely suspect to me. So
Right.
I don't know. I don't know, V. I don't know what to tell you. What do you think? After what
Well,
you've learned today, what do you think?
honestly, dude, I'm gonna say at least 4 out of 5 Bigfoots on this one. And I'll tell you why. First of all, because I had a preconceived notion of what the pyramids are based on things that I learned as a kid, right? We talked about indoctrinating earlier,
Right, right.
right? Like that's the goal of every person in power is to indoctrinate the people that follow them. So my belief is based on something that was indoctrinated to me. Like this is what it is. This is what the pyramids are. And not saying anything bad about Christianity or anything like that, God forbid. I am saying that it makes sense to me that there's some reason they want you to know what it like it's like you said, like you're telling me about it for what reason? Like why do I need to know this? Like years in the future, right? Like all these years in the future, somebody felt necessary to tell me what the Egypt pyramids are and why they're important, right? Um, which who knows, really? Like who knows, right? We can't go back in time. You can carbon date whatever as much as you want, but there's never going to be a definitive unless you existed in that era and saw it happen, or you happen to have a Stargate, right? And Kurt Russell,
Yeah.
hanging out.
Or
Then
you can
you
go
could
into the
go. But
quantum realm with Ant-Man.
yeah, exactly. So what I'm getting at is, first of all, this whole topic, like I'll be honest, I thought I'm not really interested in it. I'm more excited about an upcoming topic than I am this one. But I will say this: it did make me question things, and so I have to give it credit for that because I said, okay, this is what I know, and it's only based on things that I learned as a child in school and in Sunday school, right? And so now here I am as an adult going, well, what do I know as an adult, as somebody who's traveled the world and has some amount of knowledge, to a certain extent. I'm not a genius or anything, although I will say I'm close to being a genius.
You
Very
just got to
close.
always rub
Not a
that in our
genius.
faces.
Yeah, very close. Yeah. So that being said, that gives me questions about all of it. Like, well, what really purpose does it serve, and why are there these connections? And like, there's no answers to that. There isn't. There isn't anybody going, well, this is what it is. They're going, this is what it was, and that's what you have to believe. So already I'm going, well, I question that just because you're telling me that's what it is. Right? Like right away I go, I don't know. I don't know. Somebody goes, this is what it is, dude. This is what it is. I'm going to go, yeah, but prove it to me, first of all. Like, prove that. No, this is what we learned. Well, how do I trust you? How do I really trust what you're saying, right? Even the internet and all these sources, and even archaeologists, you can what we said earlier, right? You can discredit anyone. So you bring that
Yeah.
weak shit to my table, and I'm gonna go, you know what, dude? I don't know. I'm gonna have to question it. So although I'm quick to go, it's not aliens and it's not paranormal. I'm more inclined to believe that it's not what we think it is. At the very least, I will give this topic. I don't know. I can't honestly say, and I can't honestly believe what they tell me about it, because there are too many things that aren't coincidence, right? Or things that seem coincidence, and you go, well, that makes no sense for it to be that obvious, right? So there are theories about it, and you have to give that credit, and you have to kind of, like I said, form your own theory about it. And to me, that's enough for me to go, this was an interesting topic. It really was, because I had to create my own theory, because there wasn't enough information for me to go, well, yeah, it's got to be that. It's not like we go, oh, it was a fucking Yeti that showed up and ate the heads of these, you know, these hikers out in Dyatlov Pass. No, this is something that we have hit like decades and centuries of history, and books that we learn in school, and even biblical, what do you call it?
Accounts.
Religious resources that we can access for this. So when it starts to be, there's information from all these different sources claiming what it was, that's when I start to go, well, either nobody knew what it was and they're just making these guesses. They're just going, well, it was probably this, or they're just trying to cover up something that they don't want us to know. That's my logic as a person that examines truth and goes, is this really true? What do you think? Is that accurate? Is that
I
astute?
would
Would you at
agree.
least?
I would agree. I think I don't know. I'm at a point where the more I learn about some of this stuff, that I've just kind of like blown off and not been that interested. Because likewise, I was not particularly interested in the pyramids, but Mike asked for it, and what Mike asks for, Mike gets. And
Yeah.
so I said, well, now is my chance to learn about the pyramids. So I had to go through all this stuff and try to like learn what it originally was, or what the general consensus is. I had to learn about the geography and the history of some of these places, and like you said, no, it seems like nobody knows, and all that we're stuck with is the the whatever somebody told us at one point, and seems to be, and is the Occam's razor, right? Like, what
Right.
is the most likely answer? Oh, it's where they house the pharaohs, right? But where do they find all these mummies? They find them in archaeological digs anywhere else but the pyramids.
Yeah.
So I don't know. There's something to that. I think they've even found the pharaohs not buried in the pyramids. So if it's just the tomb for one pharaoh, that's an awfully big tomb and like a lot of wasted space. And I get not wanting to disrupt private or historical, respected places. But at the same time, it's like, well, is it just a tomb for him, or was there more to it than that? And
Right.
when you tell me that, oh well, you don't even tell me that it's just a tomb for one pharaoh. You tell me, oh, it's just a tomb for where pharaohs were buried, and then you find out, oh well, pharaohs were buried everywhere except for the pyramids, and we're finding them all over the fucking place. So if this is not a burial place for the pharaohs, it leads me to like wonder, like question everything, because
Yeah.
there were some things that I just believed, because I'm like, well, why would they lie to us about that? And then the more I see every single day now that the internet is more available, and the more we see with censorship and people trying to hide stuff from us that we already know, that we've already witnessed in real time, that now they're trying to censor from us, the hydroxychloroquine, that all of a sudden they found out that it works, and Facebook had to come out and apologize because they said that it was false information, and now they had to retract all those times that they banned people for talking about hydrochloroquine. And so now we see there's always a narrative that they're trying to shape.
Yep.
And that is not necessarily just applicable to current events. That also applies to our thousands of years of history that we have, right? That applies to that too. So when you start bringing up things in the past, like the pyramids, or what we're talking about next week, when you start bringing up these sort of things, you start to realize, well, what about this, and what about that, and what about all these other things, the moon landing, right? What about all these things that we're now starting to kind of realize that you lied to us about? Well, what about this other thing? Why should I believe you that this was the case when you asked us and assumed that we would take you on faith? And I don't know. I think that the pyramids, I think that there's more going on with that. And I think that all the things that I used to think were silly theories, I think there's probably some truth to them. I think that I think it very well could be. I'm at a point where I'm like, hell, it could be Noah's Ark. I don't know. And that seemed like the silliest one to me. But it could be Noah's Ark at this point because nobody's telling me otherwise. Nobody's clarifying. Megabit said something that I wanted to address real quick, talking about the Orion's belt and the pyramids being the occult principle of as above, so below. I think that's probably a very good point and a reason why that would apply. So that should certainly factor into your research further into the Orion's belt theory. V, did you have anything that you wanted to shill?
Oh yeah, let me shill real quick. Don't forget to follow us on our Twitters and send us messages if you feel so inclined. Tag us and stuff. We like memes a lot. There's also a Discord. Don't forget to check out our Discord. We get in there, chat, and rube each other. It's fun. It's a blast. There's even a haunted memes thread where you can just dump all your memes on us, and we can all get some enjoyment out of it. Also, like and subscribe, as always, right? That's that crappy shill that we have to do. We have a Redbubble site that you can buy some of our merch. We have some cool shirts on there. I especially love the J. Coob shirt. That's my favorite one. Still doing the contest for whoever wants to send me a screenshot of our 700th subscriber. I will buy you a shower curtain. Don't forget to do that if you're in the race, if you're even playing. As always, we love you guys. Thanks for showing up to our chat stuff and being involved, and I appreciate that. And what else? Is that it? Did I miss anything?
That's all I can think of. I don't have anything to add other than thanks for tuning in for the pyramids. And after we put it off for 3 weeks now, if you're in the major cities, be careful. Everybody buy a gun, buy many guns, buy lots of ammo, and train up on it. Get good at it because you might need it in the near future. Until next week. Oh no! Before we go, I do want to do something, and we have to do it this time because it involves this one. I have a picture of Imhotep. Remember Imhotep, the pharaoh? I need to show it before we cut loose. So here's a picture of Imhotep. His description. I told you I don't speak hieroglyphics, so.
I had no idea that the spiky-haired mullet was like that, like in history that long, thousands of years. You had no idea, but it was popular even in the Egyptian days. That variant of the mullet.
It makes me wonder if the pyramids were actually just an elaborate hair salon.
I'm Joe Biden, and I approve this message.